Well, I'm so glad you guys are here with us for week one of our new series called I Choose. And let me just tell you real quick, kind of out of the gate, the whole premise behind this series is that sometimes the most important decisions that we will make in life, they won't be the decisions that we say no. They won't be our no's. They won't be the things we say no to. Oftentimes, the most important decisions in our life are the things we say yes to. And the reason why is because when you know what you have said yes to in your life, it's a lot easier to say no to everything else. When you know what you want to be about, when you've made a decision, when you say, man, I choose that this is the kind of life I want, this is the kind of life I want to go after, when you know that, when you've said yes to something, it is so much easier to say no to other things. And so over the course of this series, which is what I'm just so excited about, we're going to look at 4 critical choices. Every single one of us, we have to confront at some point 4 critical choices that we have to make if we are interested in stepping into the life that God is inviting us into. 4 critical yeses, things that we're going to have to say yes to. And so we're just going to kind of jump right out of the gate today with our first choice. That if you and I are interested in stepping more deeply into the life that God has for us, it's going to require this choice. We're going to have to choose at some point purpose over popularity. We're going to have to choose purpose over popularity. Now, that means that there will be moments in your life, sometimes big decisions, but sometimes, more often than not, really, really small decisions, just kind of day in and day out, small decisions that you'll have in front of you, and you can choose in that moment to step more deeply into the purposes that God has for your life, or you can make a decision that will win the approval of others. Because when we talk about popularity here, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about popularity, we're talking about that desire that we have, that sort of desire that's inside of us to be liked by other people. That desire we have to win the approval of others. That desire we have to not disappoint people, right? The desire we have, just to make sure that we've got people liking us. How many of you guys are people pleasers? All right, good. The rest of you are narcissists. This is awesome. That's another message for another day. Look, here's the thing. So for all my people pleasers in the house, for anyone who has ever made a decision because you want someone to like you, for anyone who's ever made a decision because you didn't want to disappoint someone, right? This is for you. And the reality is every single one of us at some point in our life have had to make a choice and we've said, man, I'm going to do this because I don't want to let them down or because I just want to win their approval or because I want them to like me. This has happened to every single one of us. And here's the thing, we all have a desire to be approved of. And there's really nothing wrong with that desire. That desire is not wrong in itself. What's wrong and what leads us to destructive places is when that desire drives us to win the approval of others at any cost. That's when it gets destructive. When we're willing to sacrifice our own convictions just to win the approval of others, when we're willing to do it at any cost. And this is nothing new. People have been wrestling with this for centuries. People have been wrestling with this for millennia. In fact, there's a guy in the Bible, his name was King Solomon. He wrote down a ton of sayings that were just sort of these wise, pithy sayings. They're called Proverbs. And this is a proverb that he wrote 3,000 years ago. Fear of man. And when Solomon says fear of man here, fear of man is like when you and I walk around, we're scared to disappoint people. What is he going to think? What is she going to think? What's my boss going to think? What's my kid going to think? What's my parent going to think? Right? We're always like, that's fear of man. And so we begin to revolve our life around just not disappointing people. Fear of man is a dangerous what? Trap. But trusting the Lord means safety. The people-pleasing, just living our lives for the approval of others, that is a trap. You ever Instagram something and you Instagram that thing, and then when you Instagram that photo or you added it to your story on Instagram or whatever, you carefully, meticulously edited that thing. That photo or that moment, right? To make sure that you were putting out a carefully crafted image of what you want everybody else to see in that moment, right? You post a picture of your dinner. You did not post a picture of the fight that happened at dinner. You posted a picture of your vacation. You did not post a picture of the tension that existed at vacation, right? We do this all the time. I call it Insta-sham. We Insta-sham people all the time, right? Like this is not real life. You ever put something on your social feed, you posted something on Facebook, Instagram, you posted something on Snapchat, whatever, and you post these things, and then you can't go 3 minutes without going, well, let me just see who liked it. Let me just see, and way more important, let me just see who commented on it, who liked it. It's not even just how many likes it got, who did it. Why? Because we're driven. Like, do people approve? Do you approve? Do you approve? Do you approve of this? Do you like this? It's sort of in us. And take this out of the digital world for a second. Just make it, real life. We do this all the time. Have you ever thought about how many dumb choices we make, all because we just want to be liked? I was, a couple of weeks ago, I had a free Sunday, and so on my free Sunday, me and another staff member here, somebody on our team, we actually went up and I got to visit our northern campuses. So what is up, Columbia, Montour, Hazleton, Cole Township. Love you guys. I was able to spend that Sunday up there with those 3 locations, and we had some free time in the afternoon while we were up there, and so we were asking people what we should do, and it happened to be the week that the Bloomsburg Fair was going on. So I was like, you got to go to the Bloomsburg Fair. So I'm like, I've never been. Let's do this thing. Now, I'm from Alabama. And I don't know if this is really truly what happened at the Bloomsburg Fair, but I'm willing to make a bet on this, that someone flew down, or a bunch of people flew down, loaded up planes with every resident in the state of Alabama and brought them to the Bloomsburg Fair and dropped them off. Because when I walked in that place, I'm like, these are my people. I knew I was at home when I walked through that gate, and the first thing I walked into was a tractor race. And there were 40 tractors zipping around those corners at 7 miles per hour. It was awesome. Now, before we, got to the fair, we had to find a parking spot. And if you've never been up there, some of you know this, you've been before. But, the Bloomsburg Fair is right in the middle of the town of Bloomsburg. So there's homes and, there's neighborhoods and stuff like that all around it. And so what people will do is they will rent out their yards for parking. Like you can park in their yards for a particular fee. So I drive up to this one person's yard, and they're sitting in a chair out front. Obviously, they're going to allow people to park in their yard. And he doesn't have a price, he doesn't have anything posted on his in front of his yard. So I just rolled out my window and I go, hey, can I park here? He goes, absolutely. I go, how much? He goes, $6. Now, as soon as those words left his mouth, he had a neighbor who was about 9 feet away who said, $5 right here. And now I have a dilemma on my hands because I've known that first guy a lot longer and I don't want to disappoint him. And so I just stare at him for a couple of seconds, hoping he's going to come down. He doesn't do anything, so I finally just say, are you going to budge? And he goes, $6. And I pulled in and parked in the $6 parking space. I have no clue why I parked in the $6 parking space, other than I just didn't want to disappoint him. And I just couldn't imagine a scenario of me going, driving 4 feet past him, turning in, getting out of the car saying, I'm sorry, and handing $5 to the other guy. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. But I'm not going to lie, every ounce of me regrets giving that man an extra $1. I'm still worked up about it. But come on, man. Let's just get real for a second. Have you ever considered the price we are willing to pay just so we don't disappoint someone? Look, man, for some of us, it's a lot more than $1 we've given up. In fact, if we were to get really honest, if I were to ask you what some of your deepest regrets are in life, you will tell me about decisions you made, and those decisions came on the other side of this desire that you didn't want to let them down, that you were trying to win someone else's approval. And you regret some of the decisions you made. Some of us, you bought that thing because you wanted to impress them. You wanted to win their approval. And you're still paying for it, and they're not even in your life anymore. Some of us, we lied, and we cut corners because we wanted to win the approval of our boss. Some of us, we've compromised our convictions because we didn't want to let that person down, or because we didn't want to lose their approval, or because we wanted to please them. For some of us, it was a senior week, and we look back and we think, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did that, just because I wanted to win their approval, just because I didn't want to disappoint them, and I don't even know them anymore. And for some of us, it's in the workplace. For some of us, it's just relationships. But look, man, some of us, we know what this feels like. It's a trap. It is a trap. And then for some of us, it's not regret that's tied to this idea for us. For some of us, it's just the reality is that because we have been so consumed with not wanting to disappoint people and trying to please everyone and wanting to win the approval of other people, we have become a walking collection of everyone else's expectations for our life. And we've lost our own sense of identity in it all. In fact, some of you made decisions that the school that you attended, the school that you ended up going to, wasn't even the school you would have chosen. But you went there because you felt pressure and you didn't want to disappoint someone. Some of you, the line of work that you're in, the industry that you're in, the whole reason you're in that line of work has nothing to do with you have a passion for it. It has nothing to do with you feel that there's something that just brings you to life. It's because you don't want to let down a parent. And we become a walking collection of everyone else's expectations. And here's why this is so destructive. Here's why it's a trap. Because what ends up happening is we end up living the life that everyone else wants us to live. And in the meantime, we forfeit the life that God actually created us to live. It's a trap to just orient your life around trying to win the approval of everyone else, trying to please everyone else. But I want you to know there is a way through this. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to live trapped by living into the expectations of everyone else. There is a way through it. In fact, for the very first Christians, the very first followers of Jesus, this was front and center in their world, this idea. And this tension between stepping more deeply into the purposes of God for their life, even if that means they risk popularity, even if that means they risk the approval of others, this was a constant tension for them. And the reason why, if anyone has anything to say to us, it's these very first Christians, is because their decision to step more deeply into purpose, their decision to follow Jesus, to step out in faith, that actually created animosity with some of the people around them. That meant for some of them, they lost the ability to trade in the marketplace, and so the economy was affected, and so they lost money as a result of that decision. Some of them lost their life because of that decision. And I'm not trying to over-dramatize it here. I'm just trying to say, look, it may never be to that degree for you. Probably won't be. But I guarantee that if you look for it, you will find moments day in and day out, just like those very first Christians did, where you will have a decision in front of you, a choice. I can choose purpose right now, or I can choose popularity. I can win the approval of others, or I can choose to step more deeply into purpose. What's it going to be? I think this is why Paul, he was one of the very first Christian leaders. And Paul speaks into this. And what's crazy, I don't know if you knew this or not, some of you know this, Paul wrote letters to these different groups of Christians living all over the Roman Empire in the first century. And he wrote this one letter to this group of Christians living in this city called Thessalonica. Say that 3 times fast. Thessalonica. And in this letter, here's what's crazy. He wrote this letter to them 2,000 years ago. This is just absolutely, it's astounding. We still have today, we still have we still have preserved that letter. We can still read the words that Paul wrote to these Christians living in Thessalonica, which is kind of crazy. And when we see this letter, when we look, there's this one little passage in this letter that he wrote to these Christians who are struggling with this, and he says, look, let me tell you how I've navigated my way through this. Look what he says. This is in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2. He says, you know how badly we had been treated at Philippi just before we came to you, and how much we suffered there. And what Paul's referring to, he's reminding them of a story that he had told them when he arrived in Thessalonica, because right before he arrived in Thessalonica, he was in this city right here, this city called Philippi. If you want to read about this, you can go to Acts chapter 16. You can read all about this, what happened to Paul in Philippi. But it was not a good moment for Paul. Paul was in Philippi, and because he was willing to step into purpose, it put him at odds with people, and Paul was stripped, and Paul was beaten with essentially baseball bats in the public square. Paul was thrown into a dungeon, and then they eventually just ran him out of town. He runs out of town from Philippi and ends up in Thessalonica. And so he says, you know that there are choices. I know what this feels like to make choices, to step into to God's purposes for your life, and yet it's not going to win the approval of everyone. Look what he says next. And yet, our God gave us the courage to declare his good news to you boldly in spite of great opposition. Paul's saying, you want to talk about choices? I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like to have choices in front of you where if I step more deeply into the purposes that God has for me, it may cost me something. It may not win the approval of others. It won't please everyone. Paul's saying, I know exactly what that is like. And I would imagine if I'm the first, listeners to this letter in Thessalonica, I'm hearing this, and I'm sitting there going, how did you live with that kind of courage, Paul? Like, how did you have that kind of bravery to boldly step out, that kind of courage to choose purpose over popularity? And I think Paul says, funny you should ask. Because just a couple of verses later, this is what he said. I think this answers it. This is what he says. A couple of verses later, he says, for we speak as messengers approved by God to be entrusted with the good news. Now, this statement is incredibly important because this statement alone, this idea represented in this statement right here, this is the key to understanding why Paul was able to rise above needing everybody else's approval, why he was able to rise above needing to please everyone around him, and why he could step more deeply into the purpose that God has for his life. This statement is the key to unlocking that. And in fact, there's two words in particular that are the key, and it's this word, approved and entrusted. Approved and entrusted. It's almost like Paul saying, you want to know how I can choose purpose even when I don't win the approval of others? You want to know how? Because I know who I am, approved by God, and I know why I am. Why I exist, for something greater. That's what Paul discovered. And man, I just so hope and pray you discover that as well. Because I think it's Paul, essentially the fundamental truth here that Paul is saying is that the more deeply we embrace who God says we are and why God says we exist, the more we let our roots of our hearts go deep into those realities, the less likely we are to be swayed by the opinion of others. The more firmly rooted we are in our identity and who God says we are, the more firmly rooted we are in our purpose, why we exist, the less likely we are to be swayed by everybody else's opinions of us. You think about what Paul says. You want to talk about who you are, identity. He says, you want to know, you're approved by God. Paul says, that's who I am. I am approved by God. That is a remarkable statement. Just think about that for a second. Don't let that one just gloss over you. What would that look like if you lived with that conviction? If you trusted that, if you believed that you, fundamentally, you are approved of by God. Yesterday I got to watch my son play a football game. It was awesome. Silas had a great game. It was just so much fun seeing their team. And Silas did some great things. He had this one play. It was like a trick play, and he was running. Then he stopped and passed it and threw a touchdown pass, and he threw a two-point conversion. It was so much fun watching him. And after he made these plays, and it wasn't just the great plays. It was after some plays he knew that he botched some things and all that. Do you know where he looked every single time? He looked to the sideline. But he wasn't looking for his coaches, and he wasn't looking for everyone else's parents, and he wasn't looking to the other players on the team. Do you know who he was looking for? Me. He's looking for me. Every time. And you know why he was looking for me. Because he was asking, Dad, do you approve? Do you approve? Did you like that? Did you like it? Do you approve, Dad? He was looking for my approval. You have no clue. I can't even articulate how much joy that brought me. How much joy that brought me. And I can't imagine what it would feel like, and I don't know what I would do had Silas, let's just imagine the entire game goes by, and Silas makes great plays, and Silas does these great things on the field, and every time, like imagine the entire game goes by, and he looks around the entire game, but never once does he look for me. Instead, he looks to everyone else. He looks to the players on the field. He looks to other people's parents. He looks to the coaches. He looks to everyone else, but never once does he look to me. I don't know how I would have responded to that, but I imagine that part of me would want to go up to him and just grab him by the shoulders, not because I'm frustrated or angry, but just more to remind him of who I am and just to say, Silas, do you not know that I love you so much more than any of these people will ever love you? Do you not know that I already approve of you? Do you not know that these people, none of them will wake up with you tomorrow, but I'll be there? Do you not know, Silas, that none of these people, that none of them were there even a year ago in your life, but I was there the day you were born? Do you know how deeply I care for you? Do you know that I would do anything for you? Silas, look to me, man, because I already approve of you. And I don't know if that's a small glimpse of the heart of God, your heavenly Father. What God must feel like when your heavenly Father is on the sidelines and we live our lives looking to everyone else for their approval, never looking to God. Never looking to God, our heavenly Father. And we leave him on the sidelines, and I imagine God just being like, do you not know how much I love you? Why are you seeking the approval of everyone else when you have all of my approval? Why are you seeking do you not know that I stitched you together in your mother's womb? I know every part of you. I know you better than you even know yourself. And I know those other people love you, but their love for you doesn't compare to my love for you. And some of these people won't even be in your life in the future, but I will never leave you. And some of these people you didn't even know a couple of years ago, but don't you know that I knew you before the foundations of the earth were laid, and I had you in mind. Why would you go look for everyone else's approval when I'm here and you have it? That's who you are. You're approved of. You have a heavenly Father who so relentlessly loves you. He was willing to go to a cross for you. And he says, I approve. But not only who we are, does that begin to free us? Because when we know that we are approved by God, when we truly know that, all of a sudden, everyone else's approval kind of takes a back seat. Not only does that begin to free us, but Paul also says, man, I've been entrusted. I not only know who I am, but I also know why I exist. I've been entrusted with the good news. In other words, Paul is saying that I have been given a mission, and I want you to know that if you are here today and you are in Christ, I want you to know that you have been given a mission in this world. You have been given a mission and divine purpose in this life. God is bringing healing, and God is bringing hope, and God is bringing love, and God is bringing grace, and God is bringing forgiveness in this world, and God is reclaiming this world, and God is saying, man, I want to do something in this world, and I have uniquely designed you to join me in that mission. Have you ever considered that there is no one in the history of our world, and there will never be another person as long as the world continues to be, who has been put together like you? No one. You have been given unique gifts. You have been given unique strengths. You have been given unique passions. You've been wired together like you are. You have been given unique stories. And God says, I have given that all to you because I'm inviting you in to a mission, to leverage all of that, to join me in the work that I'm doing in this world, to announce with your life that it is possible to live in tune with God, that there is a God who loves this world. That's why you exist. You've been entrusted with that mission. And when you begin to settle in and believe that, man, I have a mission, I have a divine purpose for my life, all of a sudden you don't need everyone else to tell you why you exist. Because you know. Because the more deeply we rooted we are in our identity and in our purpose, the less likely we are to be swayed by the opinion of others. And that is freedom. That's freedom. Which is why I think Paul just kind of simplifies it all with this one last statement. Because right after this, he says, our purpose, it's like he sums it all up. Our purpose is to please God, not people. Now I realize I probably just could have put that verse up about 20 minutes ago and then been done for the day. Because that's about as clear as you can possibly get. That right there, that is laser sharp focus. Our purpose is to please God, not people. I mean, how clarifying is that statement? Can you imagine if you put decisions through that filter right there? Like, who am I trying to please by making this decision? And I think Paul here is not talking about just big P purpose for your life, not like, the big, like, man, what am I been put on this earth for? Not that kind of purpose. I think Paul is also just talking about your day in, day out, everyday nitty-gritty of life. Like, you're going to wake up tomorrow, and you're going to have a purpose for tomorrow. And you're going to wake up the next day, your purpose for that day. What's your purpose for that day? And then you're going to wake up on Wednesday. What's the purpose for that day? And then you're going to wake up on Thursday. What's the purpose for that day? And Paul says, I know. Kind of simple. Our purpose is to please God, not people. It just clarifies everything. And if we're willing to live by this, and if we're willing to trust that that's true, and step out and choose purpose over popularity, to choose to please God even when it might not please everyone else, if we're willing to do that, I think it'll do two things for you. I think there'll be two things that you experience when you step more deeply into the purpose that God has for you. Here's the first thing. Purpose moves us through pain. When we have a deep sense of our purpose, that my purpose is to please God, not people, when we know that, when that is embedded in us, our purpose will move us through pain in our life. And in particular, the pain that potentially comes because you step more into purpose and you lose the approval of others. Do you remember that verse we read at the very beginning where Paul says that he experienced great opposition? That's pain. In other words, on the other side of your decision to step into more purpose, even if you don't please the people around you, you may get some opposition as a result of that. And that's painful. Your choice may come with a cost. I just think we shoot straight here at our church, and so I'm just going to shoot straight with you. Your choice to step more deeply into purpose might have relational costs. Because remember, you're not living for the approval of others. You're not trying to please everyone else. And not everybody likes that. When you're in the teacher lounge this week, and all the other teachers talk negatively and talk condescendingly about the kids in their classroom, and you make the choice to please God, not people, and you withhold and you don't say anything, or you talk positively and affirmatively about your kids, that's going to make every other person around the table feel weird. And they won't like it because you're not part of it. But your purpose is to please God, not people. When you notice the accounting error and you have a choice about bringing that out or not, and you don't know, and everybody's telling you, man, just cover it. No, that's going to cause legal stuff. Like, don't worry about that. We can hide that, whatever. And you have a choice. Please God, please people. What are you going to do? Because that might come with a cost. When you choose simple things, not to laugh when everyone else is laughing at that person's expense, not to laugh at that joke that you know demeans a group of people, whatever it might be, you'll be noticed for that. When everybody in the neighborhood circles up and all the conversation at one point in that conversation turns negative about that other neighbor who happens to not be in that conversation, and your unwillingness to go there, or you're saying, no, I can't do that, or you begin to speak positively about that person, here's what will happen. You probably won't be invited into those kind of conversations anymore. But your purpose is to please God, not people. And there will be times relationally, financially, professionally, that it may come with a cost. And let me just speak to some of you real quick, because I have friends. I know a lot of you. And I have personal friends who've been down this road where your decision and your choice even to begin to come back to church, your choice to even begin to come back and explore faith and explore what it might mean to follow Jesus, that is creating opposition in your life. And that's putting you at odds with people. And for some of you, it's putting you at odds with very close people. For some of you, even your families. And you feel tension because some people in your life are beginning to say, well, hold up. Was the way I raised you not good enough? Because they raised you in a particular faith tradition and like, well, you're betraying the family. You begin to feel all this. And that you're disappointing the family or that you're disappointing others by just beginning to explore what it might mean to follow Jesus. Some of you are considering getting baptized in November, and you're terrified of even considering that because you realize, what's my parents going to think? What's my family going to think? And it feels like a betrayal of sorts. But here's what I want to tell you, and I think this is going to free some of you. You don't need anyone else's permission to step into the purposes that God has for your life. You need no one's permission. You don't need your parents' permission to follow Jesus more closely. You don't need your spouse's permission. You don't need your friend's permission. You need no one else's permission. God says, I approve of you. I am calling you into something. I have entrusted you with a mission. I am calling you into something greater. And yes, it may not make sense to everyone. It may not be the most popular choice, but you're not here to please everyone else. You're here to please God. The second thing living with that kind of purpose will do is purpose fuels courage. Purpose fuels courage. Remember those words that Paul used earlier when he said that we boldly stepped into that? With great courage, yet God gave us courage. When you know what you're about, you have courage. And that doesn't mean you won't be scared. That doesn't mean when you have a choice, purpose over popularity. It doesn't mean there's not fear. Courage is when, my wife always says, just do it scared. Just do it scared. Yeah, you're still scared, but it doesn't matter. Just step into it. That's courage. Because you know what you want most in life. And where we need courage, usually, this is a little bit different than the pain piece. This one is when you make choices to step more into purpose, and it's not that people oppose you for that, they just don't understand. It just doesn't make sense. It's just odd. Like, why would you give your money away to that? Why would you give your time to that? Why would you do that? Why would you talk in those ways about that group? Why wouldn't you join us for that? Like, it's just odd. And you're sitting there going, it's fine. I'm cool with that because I'm here to please God, not people. And you will be given more courage than ever before when you make that decision. Guys, when you face the choice, and you will face it, when you face the choice, purpose, popularity, purpose, approval of others, purpose, pleasing everyone else around me. I just want you to choose purpose. Because living for the approval of everyone, that's a trap. And if you need something helpful, maybe just write this prayer down. Because this is a prayer I just want to encourage you to pray this week. Just pray this prayer at some point this week. God, my purpose today is to please you, even if that means I don't please everyone. That's a declaration. God, my purpose today is to please you, even if that means I don't please everyone. Because that's where freedom is. That's where freedom is. One of the things I love so much about our church is just hearing how so many of you are choosing purpose over popularity, getting to hear your stories. And we just love telling those stories. I actually want you to hear a story, and this story is actually about someone on our staff here. I want you to hear Donovan and Christina's story, because they had a moment, and they've been in a season where they've had a choice in front of them about stepping more deeply into God's purposes for their life and considering what that might mean for them. And yet their journey for how they have courageously done that, it's just inspiring. So I want you to take a look at the screen to hear Donovan and Christina's story.
All right, my name is Donovan Henry, and I've been here for about a little over 90 days now. Yeah, and by here I mean in Pennsylvania. And 90 days ago, we were in Los Angeles, California. I'd lived there for about 20 years, almost 20 years. I was actually born in England, in a little country town called Trowbridge, England. Then my father became, I guess you could say he became a missionary to the United States. In 1980, he decided to move us to Hartford, Connecticut. Eventually went to a performing arts high school and did jazz piano there. And then from there went to Berklee College of Music and spent time there. I ended up in Los Angeles because I had to do an intern for my degree at Berklee. Fell in love with the city and was just like, I'm not going back. My first gig in Los Angeles was with Snoop Dogg on the Jay Leno show. And after that, did music and traveled and toured and just kind of did the whole LA thing. So I met Christina while I was on tour with an artist. That was one of the good things that came out of touring.
We actually met in London. He was out there touring and we met at this place that was local to where I lived that I sort of went, often. It was like a place where they played live music. And
it was kind of a quick kind of spark of a moment, and we stayed in touch. We just built a relationship over the phone and intercontinental. Eventually I was like, you know what, this is becoming expensive, so let's get married.
And now here we are, many years later. I've actually been a makeup artist for a long time, over a decade. And then when I moved to LA, I just found that my career just kind of blew up, music videos for people like Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift. And several award seasons like the Golden Globes, just lots of things.
And I've been working for this entertainment union for 13 years, and while doing that, I'd stopped touring, but I'd still continue to serve at church. But it was getting to a point where it was starting to tire on our schedule and just life in general. And I told Christina, I want God to do something where it just makes a shift in our life, and I'm either pursuing what God wants me to do through worship, or I'm gonna pursue this job, but I can't do both. A year from that, I get a Facebook email just out the blue, and it's Matt Goss. And his email basically was like, just want to say hi and just let you know, been thinking about you and been praying for you over the years, and I'm here at this church in Pennsylvania, and would love to have you come out and just check us out. And Pennsylvania was probably the farthest state from my mind, because I'd fallen so in love with Los Angeles and just what was happening there. But it was one of those moments where it was like, this is too different for it to be man-made. There has to be something behind this. And I'm talking to Christina, and I'm like, yeah, so I got this email from a friend of mine that I haven't spoken to since like 1999. And, and I kind of went through what he talked about in the email about just an opportunity and just wanting to reach out.
I literally said, what's in Pennsylvania? Like, what are we going to do in Pennsylvania? What? So I've always kind of backed him up, so when he said that he needed to do something else, I knew that, okay, we need to start looking into this, and how can we make this change and transition and everything else. So I couldn't really see an option as moving,
It's a huge move, and it's a lot of unplugging and a lot of repositioning. What are the consequences of uprooting our entire family, finding new schools, finding new environments, finding new work for my wife? For me, my thought was, God's purpose is greater than anything else. And even if it's scary, which it was, because again, there's no promise that everything will work out fine. All we can do is trust again.
But as time went on, and as we had prayed and talked about it, and as we visited the church, we kind of really sort of knew that this was where we were supposed to be. We've really felt comfortable about it, Again,
knowing that you're following what God is asking you to do is kind of where that safety and that feeling comes in. Even though we were nervous about just all of the changes, God has been with us, and He's been with us, and He's shown Himself through people's kind words, through people's kind actions, so it's been good.